Fears and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 4. Gerard should have been studying Healer Bear's notes, but it hurt seeing the same thing every morning. Living it was worse. Every day he arrived at isolation and changed out the second skin and powdered ointment Lord Ferdinan supplied them. Then the superintendent arrived. The man searched for Yu, insisted her voice was still there, but no matter how many days passed, the man couldn't communicate with her. It didn't matter how much her body healed if her mind was lost to brain damage. If Gerard could heal it. But no. Searching a mind was one thing, but manipulating the brain, the actual organ, was more than immoral. It was horrific. Hoping it'd heal on its own, however, knowing the likelihood of this broke his heart. But statistics. It didn't matter. The number of people waiting for Yu to wake up extended far beyond the islands. She was important to many people, the least of which being his sweet mate. Waves lapped gently at the side of the transport. Zhao. The healer couldn't guess how much the tinkerer was hurting. First his family and country, then his future, his little sister, and now, waiting, not knowing if Yu would join them. Gerard fought the urge to cry. It felt like years since he'd had a break. Being Calge, he'd never really have one, but he'd worked non-stop since the plague hit. Endless weeks of healing the younger students daily to stay ahead of the damage exhausted him. And the cure. There was only leftover internal damage to worry about. Then that miraculous treatment came. It was amazing. For the first time in months, the healer could breathe. That treatment, the hope it provided, was enough to energize him through the break. The countless lessons and decisions and training for his position. Returning to school was supposed to be my vacation. Tears welled up. Gerard buried his face in his hands, refusing to lower them till he regained composure. As lead student healer, he assisted Healer Bear regularly. He cared for Elby's hands and lungs while Bear attended to Yu, initially. Now Healer Bear tended to Yu in the evening, and Gerard after morning training. Nutrients were pumped into her afternoons and nights so they could heal her. Exhaustion breathed out of the healer. Light brown eyes took in the purple dawn. The sun wasn't up yet, but he wasn't sleeping. He tried, but how could he with all his responsibilities from home and school weighing on him? Adding Zhao into the mix? I'm so tired. Tears welled up again, and he pressed a hand to his forehead, as if it would hide him from reality. Even a few seconds break. At least Yu's progressing faster than expected, somehow. But was this a good thing? Sitting down on the deck, the couch rested his head in his hands, and refused to look at anything until the transport docked. Thanking the teacher who brought him, he disembarked, keeping his eyes trained on isolation. All his years before now, combined, didn't equal the hours he'd spent in that building the last few months, if this kept up until he graduated. Gerard shook that thought from his mind and entered. After a quick greeting to Healer Lee, he headed to Yu's room, grabbing a modified laser and a container of white powder on the way. He couldn't start changing the second skin until Nami arrived, but setting everything up was better than pacing his room. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, the healer would have never believed this powdery substance could heal anything. Lord Ferdinan creates the strangest miracles. I never thought they'd be useful here. He managed what we can't. Opening the door, Yu's unconscious body was expected, but that strange girl, with inhuman eyes and unnatural hair. What was her name again? Why didn't Lee tell me? Gerard's mind stopped. No visitors were allowed at this hour in general, and for Yu at all. So how had... Oya, that's right. Zhao said she doesn't like titles and can be pretty mean. And Ilu. The boy mostly teared up at the mention of her. But how did she get in here? The strange girl sat on the bed, eyes closed, and one hand on Yu's forehead. It didn't look like Oya was doing anything. Still, that didn't mean she was allowed to be in here. Putting down the materials, he tapped her on the shoulder. When she didn't respond, he shook her gently. It didn't seem possible for someone to sleep like this, but being purposely ignored wasn't something he could handle right now. Eventually the girl blinked and looked around, surprise-filled impossible green eyes. Then that surprise deepened. The healer could almost see her mind searching for a course of action. I'm sorry, but you can't be here. Yu won't be allowed visitors for some time. A wild grin curled shapely lips, and Oya stretched tall and long. I wasn't visiting. Then, what were you doing? Those eyes stared hard at him before glowing with a strange light. You're not the only one invested in her recovery. But I'm one of the few responsible for it. Her words irritated him more than they should, but Gerard smiled gently. Just because he was tired and frustrated didn't give him the right to lash out over a callous comment, especially one she probably didn't mean anything rude by. I'm sorry, Oya, but you need to leave. When she's able to have visitors, you can come back. And if I'm not visiting? It took everything he had not to yell, or whimper, whichever would have left him. I know you haven't been classified, but even if you were cooperating with Ilu, and he classified you as a healer, you don't have the training or the knowledge to help someone in her condition. Something between a smirk and a sneer marred her face as Oya stifled a snort. Please. A hand covered his eyes again. He didn't know if he wanted to cry, hit her, or was fighting back a headache. He didn't know anything. He just wanted everything to freeze. Just for a moment, just long enough for a breath, a break, anything. I can't imagine how frustrating this is. Born a healer, could care for simple wounds and illnesses before you realized it was anything special, only to find yourself faced with someone who won't recover without your help, and possibly even with it. The sincerity in her voice surprised him. Tears Gerard fought against for an eternity hit hard and fast. All he could do was crouch down and hide behind his hands. That was all. Why? Showing this kind of weakness went against everything drilled into him since childhood. But he couldn't stop. And he didn't want to. He just wanted to sit down and cry until he passed out. He just wanted it all to stop. Golden brown hands took his. All the craze and amusement from a moment before had vanished from those impossible green eyes. There was no grin, no whimsy on her face. If the couch didn't know better, he'd swear this was an entirely different girl. Not everything can be fixed, healer. Oya looked at Yu, but there's still merit in trying. She reached a hand to his head, but stopped, as if considering something. A sigh left her, and she took his hands once again, this time pulling Gerard up with her. Once they were standing, he found himself towering over her by a head. Frustration, sorrow, fear, anger, helplessness. Oya looked at her hand before placing it over his heart. Those are normal. How do you keep them from winning? His jaw trembled and his throat tightened, making his answer much higher pitched than he was comfortable with. The tears hadn't stopped while Oya spoke, and now they were coming faster. Don't know. I don't know how to help her. I don't know if she'll wake up. I don't know if any of this matters, or if I'm just delaying the inevitable. If I'm just making it harder for everyone who loves her. Why was he saying all this? He needed to stop. This wasn't something he should be saying to anyone, for so many reasons, not the least of which was Yuyu's privacy. But his tongue kept going until he said what haunted him. Her body's healing too fast for us to make sure she'll enjoy a full life. Her hands. She's a tinkerer. She needs her hands. They have to heal right, or she'll lose the dexterity she needs. And her brain. Nothing's changed. There should be something. She should be trying to wake up. She should be trying even if we can't let her. Why was he saying all this? Even if I heal her hands perfectly, she won't wake up. I need her to wake up. It's so mysterious. The land of tears. The delicate hand on his heart moved behind his back as she pulled him into a hug. He had no idea how long he stood there crying. There was a little relief from Oya's ice-cold hands. Her whole body was colder than it should be. If anything, she was soaking in his warmth. Yet, this comfort. When was the last time someone held him? Let him be the scared boy he was inside. Would he ever get this again? Please don't stop. Please don't stop. Securing his lab door, Ferdinan headed toward the advanced science classrooms, the only classes he was required to attend. At the building's entrance, he stopped and breathed in deep. Time to turn off the music. If the voice proved too much, he'd turn it on again, but he needed to try. Constantly listening to music for the rest of his life wasn't an option. If he could make it through class, he'd build up his tolerance from there. Maybe. Tapping the earpiece ended the dancing metallic notes. His gaze drifted to the window down the hall. On the other side was a courtyard and students relaxing in the sun. Tensing, he closed his eyes and waited for a particularly bitter memory to end. Master Ferdinan? Huh? Looking down, Ferdinan saw his pupil leaning against the wall. Elby, shouldn't you be in class? How are you going to hurt him, I wonder? No. A pale, shaky Elby moved forward. I'm going back to my room. I don't feel well. I'm sorry. Don't worry about today's session. Just let me know when you're better. Thank you. Elby nodded pathetically. Pulling a screen from his bag, the boy offered it to Ferdinan. I'm not contagious. The CD made breakfast and it didn't taste right. Here are the blueprints for the inductor. I highlighted all the errors and drew it correctly. I'm sorry. A grimace took over Ferdinand's face at his pupil's obvious discomfort. Food poisoning was one of the few things a healer couldn't do much about. His hands looked like they were never damaged. Yu, will she be the same? Why won't they tell me anything? I'll look this over. When you're better, we'll discuss it. Thank you, sir. Elby moaned and wrapped his arms around his stomach. I'll take you to the dorms. Thank you, but they've already sent the transport. Awkward silence fell while Elby caught his breath and straightened. Mostly. Master Ferdinan? Yes? Ferdinan knelt, putting them at eye level. Thank you for saving me. I thought I was going to die. Elby paled further and stared at his hands. You've always done everything you could for me. Now you've saved my life. Thank you. Such an innocent expression. It turned Ferdinan bright red. If not for Oya, I wouldn't have known. I'm happy you're safe. You, a hero? Huh. No, it was amazing. You found us and got us out, but... Elby rubbed his belly, unhappy at his sudden outburst. But Ferdinan paled at his student's agony. You saved us. Elby swallowed hard, eyes filling with tears. Thou understands Rura couldn't be. Please don't blame yourself. What? Rura, Zhao's sister? She died instantly. Numbness set in. The world stopped spinning. Rura was in the building? Grating laughter filled a blurred reality. Scenery changed. Eyes stared. Air grew warm, then cold. Ferdinand didn't notice he was sitting, or the screen in front of him. You abandoned her. She was there? There was another person? How did I not see her? Time slowed, warping the sounds around him. Enjoying the peace, murderer. Leave me alone. Millions weren't enough. You had to add more. No, no one died in that fire. You left a little girl behind. She burned to ash. No, I didn't know. Was there enough left to bury? Stop, it's not true. It can't be true. You experimented on Zhao's uncle till death. No, stop. You stood by while his family died. No, stop it. Shut up. You left his sister to burn. Stop it. Shut up. Ferdinand screamed. His slight weight swayed on unsteady feet, bony fists clenched, in the middle of the classroom. Incompetent child. Can't even keep a private conversation to yourself. Blue crystals widened. Everyone was staring at him, faces twisted. Silence deafened the room. Because of him. All this sunk in, turning Ferdinand bright red. Everything blurred as he ran.